Grace Abbott once said that child labor and poverty are inevitably bound together, and if you continue to use the labor of children as the treatment for the social disease of poverty, you will have both poverty and child labor to the end of time. Child labor affects the lives of roughly 150 million children worldwide. These children have been forced to give up schools, sports, play, and sometimes even their families and homes to work under dangerous, harmful, and abusive conditions. Many children are engaged in paid and unpaid forms of work worldwide, but are classified as child laborers when the work is considered hazardous or the child is underage. Though the United Nations has outlawed child labor, it still occurs in 6 major countries today, and Afghanistan is one of those countries with one of the highest rates of child labor in the world. In Afghanistan, childhood is often a full-time job, for about 52% of Afghan children are child laborers working in hazardous conditions. Although some may say that child labor is a necessity for families in Afghanistan due to the country's high poverty rates, ultimately child labor is detrimental to the future of Afghanistan's children by hindering their access to basic human rights and opportunities that every child deserves. The economic situation in Afghanistan is the direct cause of Afghan children becoming full-time laborers to help support their families. Data from the World Bank suggests that 36% of Afghans live in poverty, so more than 9 million people. Many families in Afghanistan are poor enough to pay back debts, so they need more working people in their family, leading to the employment of their children. In a UN News interview, Sarah Kramer, the lead author of the survey Buried in Bricks, says that it's out of necessity and extreme poverty that households enlist their children from an early age to work in the kilns. So it's not a first option for families to employ their kids in jobs like in brick kilns. It is a last resort due to the dire economic situation of many families in Afghanistan. Faced with never-ending debt, families feel they have to use all available labor, even if it is to their long-term detriment, just to make their daily ends meet. Families may not want their kids to work and instead focus on their education, but the extreme poverty they are facing leaves them no choice. They need more working people in the family. Child labor is a necessity for most Afghan families to survive, so it cannot be defeated by enacting more and more laws, but must be defeated by economic empowerment for the whole country. Only then will the cycle of child labor be broken. These children are thinking about their family and are sacrificing their future to help their family because of the poverty they face. But despite the reason, ultimately child labor is still detrimental to their future. Most Afghan children are forced into labor that endangers their lives. Afghanistan's child labor laws are largely ignored because of resistance from employers and families who need the income. This resistance is wrong, for it leads children to be involved in illegal labor that is often dangerous. UN News says that about 25% of Afghan children are employed in hazardous work, and in jobs like in the brick kilns, there is a poor enforcement of safety and health standards for these children. In September of 2015, Human Rights Watch interviewed Sher Khan, a brick kiln manager in Kabul, who stated that yes, the child workers complain of pain, but what can they do? The kids are here to make a living. They bear all the pain to do the work. This employer resistance to child labor laws is what leads children to be overworked and given dangerous jobs with little pay that result in harassment and injury. Most employers lack sympathy for the children's pain because to them, they are here to make a living like any other adult worker. A U.S. Department of Labor report describes sexual abuse of children who herd livestock, and it tells of children maimed or killed in construction jobs and forced to work in extreme cold or heat. This brutal treatment of children, some of which are only 5 or 6 years old, is inhumane. These children have not yet developed to maturity, both physically and mentally, and are being forced into highly dangerous working conditions. This is what is unacceptable about child labor. No matter how important the reason is for a child to work, like to help their family, these children should not be harmed in the process. All in all, the high rate of child labor is still a serious issue in Afghanistan, but Afghanistan is not the only country that still practices child labor. Virtually everyone is guilty of participating in this abusive practice through the purchase of goods made across the globe, usually in poor developing nations like Afghanistan. In the past few years, a great deal of attention has been drawn to this global issue because of reports that have linked well-known companies like Nike and Walmart to the exploitation of children. Our society is not doing enough, and it is time for governments across the world to take a bigger stand and help end the cycle of child labor. Because ultimately, there is no reason, there is no excuse. Child labor is child abuse.